Let the scriptures speak for themselves.
That was kind of the second thing I wanted to talk to you about was what were you studying? Were you studying certain book of the Bible? You said you were teaching like a futurist view of eschatology. What did you start to come across that you began to ask, maybe I missed something here in the Bible, or maybe, I'm not considering something. Was there like a particular linchpin or multiple linchpins for you that, really began to get the wheels turning?
Yeah, and when I tell you, you're going to be surprised, but
Okay.
I think you watched my video where I talk about this. But so I told you I had that kind of weird compulsion that I couldn't explain, but I knew was from God to read and read and read. Well, one day at my house, some Seventh-day Adventists stuck a copy of The Great Controversy in my mailbox.
Awesome.
And so I pull that thing out. I'm like, what is this? And I was like, oh, this is that SDA book. And I was like, I'm going to read it.
Sure.
Why not? I was like, I'll evaluate it. I didn't know. You learn about different groups and their beliefs, but then you kind of forget. So I was like, I'll refresh. I want to know what you're trying to push here. So I started reading that thing. And man, if you've never read it, the first chapter is all about 70 AD.
Wow.
It is all about it. It's about Josephus. It's about how, and it cross-references it with the Bible, and not just like one book. It's all over the Old Testament.
Wow.
It's cross-referencing the events, and it does a actually pretty good job. And it was enough that it opened my eyes, and I was like, wait a second, is this stuff sounds pretty legit. Like that really does match up a little bit. So what's going on? I mean, this just shook my tree, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I gotta figure this out, because this makes me wonder.
Sure.
And the question I started asking was, could the events of the first century leading up to and including the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, could it map to some of these prophecies? When I read through Daniel, is it plausible? That was the first question. Is it plausible that I can match these events up to some stuff that happened in the first century? So there was this, there's also that idea, when you're a futurist and a dispensational, you have that idea of this prophetic gap, right? There's the prophecy of Daniel 9, which includes the 70 weeks, right? And it's about 500 years worth of prophecy. Well, the futurist dispensational view is that up until a certain point, that's all fine, but then there's this break, and then we're still in this 2000, maybe 3, 4, who knows how many 1,000-year break before the end of that 500-year prophecy, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I knew from my background, I was like, I questioned that. It's like, that seems weird. Why would Daniel prophesy something that lasts from his time to the people he was prophesying it to for 490 years or so, or around that, and then break for 2,000 and then finish up? To me, that didn't make any sense. So I went to Daniel thinking, I'm going to look at this from the two things. One, does that gap make any sense with what Daniel says? And then number two, can I start to toy with the idea of these things happening in the first century, right? And so I had this vacation coming up, and I spent every waking moment where me and the kids or my wife weren't doing anything. I was in the Bible. I read through Daniel 9 and 12 and the surrounding text in Daniel, like, I don't know, 15 times or so.
Sure. Yeah.
Just
right.
mapping it out and trying to see, like, could that have been? And the question in every case was, yes, it could have been. Yeah. And then I was like, maybe those SDA guys had something there. I don't know, but
you ever heard that God can use a crooked stick to draw a straight line? You ever heard that?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Not to
we
pick
really
on
have
Seventh-day Adventists, but yeah.
No, and it's even the cultists have some of it right. And I'm not necessarily I'm not even calling SDA a cult. I actually don't know that I would really categorize them that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super familiar, but
I've read some esoteric and Kabbalistic texts that have some truth in them.
And what could you explain that really for me and the listeners, what's esoteric and what was the other word?
Kabbalistic. So
Kabbalistic.
Kabbalah is a Jewish mysticism religion that
Okay.
came out of Babylon, and it was a mix of Babylonian and Zoroastrianism from Persia,
Okay.
and it grew
Interesting.
into a kind of a Jewish mysticism that has survived till the present day. We even have some people in the entertainment industry that are Kabbalists,
Ah,
and it is a way essentially of tapping into the spirit world in a very dark way that you don't want to do.
kind of cultistic type stuff.
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
And so all I'm saying is, they have some things right, but they're not doing the right thing. So we have to understand that a lot of people, there's sources of truth in a lot of different places.
Sure.
And we can't be so high and mighty to think that, well, if the SDA group has some things wrong, then they have everything wrong. That's not a very
It's
valid
a bad
argument.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where I stand on that. But this journey I took on that vacation to read through Daniel and mapping it the first century is really what started me. After that, I was like, I don't really have any questions about Daniel 9 anymore. I just explained everything to myself.
It all makes sense now, right?
Yeah. Whereas before it was like, it was more than half question marks and, antichrists and abominations and things. And that's just not the case. After that, I was like, man, I really got to figure all this out because this thing's real.
Yeah, sure.